Welcome to the brand new SIGA WOW show, Women on Wednesdays, brought to you by SIGA, the world's leading organisation for sport integrity. On the first Wednesday of every month, SIGA will showcase thought leadership initiatives spearheaded by female executives, senior industry leaders, sportswomen and influencers who will address, from a female lens, the most critical integrity challenges facing contemporary sport. This first episode shines a spotlight on inspirational senior executives in international motorsport. Kate Bevan, Global Director, Hospitality and Experiences at Formula One, and Catherine Bond-Muir, CEO of the W Series. Presented by SIGA's Global COO and Managing Director of the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Program, Katie Simmons. Tune in to watch our guest speakers discuss their career journeys, the impact of the pandemic of COVID-19, integrity issues at the heart of motorsport, and much more. Don't miss our giveaway question to win VIP virtual paddock club passes for the Monaco Grand Prix. We are ready for SIGA WOW. Over to you, Katie.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of SIGA WOW. For those that don't know me, my name's Katie Simmons. I'm the Global COO at SIGA, and I'm Managing Director of the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Program. Now, I'm sure all of you, like me, during the lockdown, are suffering from webinar weariness. Well, the SIGA WOW show is different. It's a new format, innovative and informative, all designed around one central theme, which is to propel, celebrate and instigate change and celebrate female leadership in sport for the future generations. So grab a coffee or something stronger. We've been speaking about gin and tonics beforehand already here, and take a journey on SIGA WOW with me. And what a wow lineup I have ready for you today. We have Kate Bevan, who's the Global Director of Hospitality and Experiences at the one and only Formula One. And we have Catherine Bond-Muir, who is the CEO of the W Series, which is the all-female, single-seated racing car series designed to instigate change and bring more women to the track. A couple of housekeeping before we start. The SIGA WOW show is interactive, so please send me your questions in advance in the live chat and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SIGA Alliance, hashtag SIGA Women. And I did promise one person I'd do this once, SIGA WOW. So there we go. And stay tuned for our giveaway question, which Kate will give us the chance to win VIP passes for the virtual paddock club at the Monaco Grand Prix, which is, in my opinion, the race of all races. So before I introduce our very first guest, Kate Bevan, let's take a trip down memory lane before COVID and remind us all of the world's greatest sporting spectacle and experience. It's the Paddock Club, Formula One.
2 minutes to go.
Legend has it, this is where giants come to seal the deal. Here I am, they roar. But theirs are not the only roars here. In this place, where carbon fibre beasts rip round you at 300 kilometres an hour, where the tension before lights out makes the hardened flutter and the mighty gasp, this is where a handshake can warp the course of history, where what's written on a napkin can send shockwaves. Below is where the F1 elite soldier from truck to track. Into battle they go, into battle you go. A place where you'll be at the beating heart of it all. Where time is on your side. And the sun sets 3 times. 1, 2, 3. This is Paddock Club. Isn't it time you wrote your legend?
Kate, I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell us about your career journey so far.
Thank you for having me, by the way, Katie. My career journey, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, really. It was a little bit messy, to say the least, but I didn't mean to be where I am, and I guess that's a story that that quite a few people can tell. Actually, I think as you get older, you realise that life didn't take you in the path you first thought it was going to. I originally studied anthropology, and I wanted to be an anthropologist. And now I'm working in hospitality and Formula One. How I got there is a very winding road. I qualified as a lawyer, and the reason I qualified as a lawyer over 25 years ago was because I was a single parent and I needed a sensible career. So I didn't go into it from any sense of vocation. I did it because it was the only available profession that would have me. So I became a lawyer, and I stayed a lawyer. I only stopped really being on the roll as a lawyer 2 years ago, in fact. And I worked in private practice. My biggest client was a first mentor of mine, a guy called Tom Welkinshaw, and he owned a car design company. So I worked in the automotive industry for the first few years. And then he acquired a Formula One team, Arrows, and that's how I first got involved in Formula One. That all went bust, and then I got a phone call from Bernie saying, come and join me. And I didn't really want to work in London, so I said no until I couldn't say no any longer. He's a terrible charmer, Bernie Eccleston. And I thought I'd do it for a year, and I've stayed ever since 2003. I've been at Formula One, first as a lawyer, working in intellectual property, then moving into the deal-making side of it, the commercial side of it. And I realized very quickly that I liked the commercial side of the business. I took over, I had a look at the Paddock Club for Bernie, and then when Liberty came in, they said, what area of the business do you want to do? And I said I would be very happy to take over, run and overhaul our hospitality business, which is what I've been doing since Liberty took over. So as you can see, it's a bit of a sideways path to where I am.
I think that's right, Kate. There's no one straight path on your career. And could you obviously Formula One, it's a male-dominated sport historically. What are the barriers that you faced? Sounds like you just sort of pushed your way past everything and you got to where you wanted to be. But as a woman, did you face barriers? Did you face discrimination? And how did you overcome that?
I think we get asked that a lot. I'm sure Catherine does as well. I mean, I found the automotive industry that I was working in before Formula One was even more male dominated. It's big companies, big corporates, big car companies. And I think I would say what most people would say, which is that you have to have self-confidence. There is nobody out there that's doing something that you can't realistically do. I don't run marathons. But I'm pretty sure, and I don't want to run marathons, but I'm pretty sure that if I put my mind to it, I could train to run a marathon. I'm not incapable of doing it. And I think that it's that self-belief that you need to have a lot of. There are a lot of people out there doing a lot of interesting things. You can do them as well if you want to. So I think it's all about self-confidence. It's easy to have that knocked out of you when people perceive you differently. And the first thing is when you walk into a room, they don't listen, or they expect you to make the tea, or the perception of you as a woman in a male-dominated industry, the initial perception is sometimes loaded with some, but actually I find they disappear quite quickly. If you are confident and good at what you do, they do. You can get over them.
You can break the barriers. On breaking barriers, without further ado, I'm bringing Catherine into the conversation. And before we kick off, Catherine, let's just play this awesome clip of the W Series, because I think it sets the scene and it is time for women in racing.
The woman hasn't raced in Formula One for 43 years.
A new motor racing series that won't have a single male driver in sight.
Und wir sprechen jetzt über die W-Series.
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 The new W Series will see 6 races across Europe.
A new generation of women drivers are determined to take on the men at their own game.
It's time for women's motorsport.
Alice Powell. Jamie Chadwick.
Jessica Hawkins. Naomi Schuster.
Welcome to W Series. Lights go out and we're racing in W Series. Jamie Chadwick wins the first W Series race. SIGA takes the win in Zolder.
Pretty much perfect race.
And it's go in Mazzano. A huge crash there. The final W Series race of the season. Alice Power through. She takes the win. History made once again in W Series. Jamie Chadwick becomes the first ever W Series champion.
Catherine, it's absolutely inspirational, that video. Tell us, what is the drive, no pun intended, behind the W Series? And also, you know, your entrepreneurialism is exemplary. You started off, I think we've got 3 lawyers here on the first WOW show, that we've started out law. How did you come up with the W Series, and what has been your career progression so far?
Well, if I start from the beginning, so similar to Kate, I suspect I'm a bit older than Kate, or maybe she started a bit later than me, but I qualified as a lawyer, I think 28 years ago. I stayed in the profession for a few years, realised I didn't want to become a partner, and so left. But when I was a solicitor, I specialised in IP and specifically sport. I left, I did, I think about 3 years of sports marketing after that. And that wasn't sufficiently intellectually challenging for me. I sort of got slightly bored of it. So I went into the city, and that's really where I found my natural home. My natural home was doing deals. And I did that in the sports and leisure space. And I had many, many fantastic, wonderful years there, enjoyed it enormously. Obviously, very male-dominated environment at that time. And then I gave up work when I was 45 to have my first and only child. You know, nothing was more important to me at that time in my life. So just didn't do anything for a couple of years. And my friends were taking sweepstakes on how long it was going to be before I did something again. I thought I wasn't going to work again, but the school gate and me weren't necessarily the closest of bedfellows. So I was trying to think, what on earth was I going to do with my life? I knew I didn't want to be an advisor anymore, and I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. And I was looking into a variety of things, but by coincidence, it was actually at that stage that I had a drink with a couple of friends of mine, and they said, well, what about a women-only motor racing series? Since there was a glass of wine involved, I thought it was a brilliant idea because I was very enthusiastic. I did some research, and I thought, well, if men and women can race equally with each other, it's a completely rubbish idea. And then I did some more research and realised that year on year over the previous 8 years, the numbers of women racing in single-seater series across the world was actually going down. And that was actually right at the same point that lots of other sports, the female involvement was increasing significantly. So in sports like rugby, soccer, football, and cricket, you know, women were making great strides, but it seemed the participation of drivers in motorsports was going down. And therefore, I really believed at that stage that there was a good business case. I spent a couple of years running around everyone I knew trying to raise money. I'm sure lots of people on this call will understand. It's incredibly difficult to say you want to raise £20 million on an idea. But eventually I did find someone who was actually a school friend of David Coulthard, because David had become involved in the business, and introduced me to Sean, and he has been the cornerstone investor and got us to where we are now, which is in our second season of racing, racing with Formula One, and looking forward to Kate giving me a lot of hospitality at the weekends that we're racing with Formula One.
With pleasure.
Fantastic. Kate's saying with pleasure for the hospitality. I can't wait either. I'll just throw my hat into the ring there. But absolutely phenomenal then. A story of you know, I love the way you have, you know, broken the boundaries on the W Series. And obviously you've done this, Catherine, at a time when the COVID pandemic, fast forward a year after you launch, hit, which was being the biggest calamity in our lifetimes. It's hit every industry. Sport is no exception. How has that affected the W Series launch? And how has it sort of exacerbated what we are seeing, a big gap growing between male and women's sports?
Well, I mean, COVID has obviously been incredibly tough on all businesses. And I know that Formula One last year, everyone was working at 200 miles an hour just to get themselves to the track. We made the decision that given the fact we were such a young brand, it was better probably not to race rather than to present a sort of a shadow of what we wanted to be. We didn't have the longevity of 70 years racing like Formula One does. So people didn't, you know, we had only had 6 races. But in the event, we could never have raced anyway, just because of the COVID rules that we were subject to and where we were going to race. But actually, I do look back and think that COVID, or having some time off, COVID, I wasn't going to say COVID had done some favours, but the time off that we had in last year actually gave us an enormous opportunity to slow down and think more about what W Series was going to be in the future. I know Alejandro Agag, when I spoke to him about the beginning of Formula E, he said, you know, just like W Series was, you know, when you're right at the start, you know, everyone is running a million miles an hour and all you're seeing is the next race, the next race, the next race, and you're not thinking about what your brand can be, where it can go, what you want to achieve long term. And I think that time off has actually done us some favors. Obviously, from our point of view, doing a deal with, you know, Formula One and having all of our races with them this current year is spectacular for us. And, you know, we've got some very bold plans on how we want to, you know, dominate the world in the future.
Thank you. And to bring Kate in, I mean, Kate, you've got the word experience in your job title, and that's exactly what Formula One is. It's an experience. You can hear it, feel it, touch it, taste it when you're there, you know, watching the best drivers, the best places, the best faces, doing and driving a million miles an hour. How have you compensated or transitioned and innovated for the COVID pandemic for Formula One?
Well, on the hospitality side, it was obviously a complete disaster. The racing continued, as you know. We ran a full calendar last year, a full championship calendar. Formula One turned up, went racing, it went on television. The only thing that was missing was my bit, was all of the guests and, of course, all the fans as well. So from that point of view, it was a bit of a disaster, obviously. And I echo what Catherine says here, you know, nobody wants to say that, you know, be so crass to say that good things have come out of COVID. But I do think that I echo the sentiment that it made us reflect. It allowed us to reflect. But we couldn't reflect for long. We have sponsors who paid a lot of money to be involved in Formula One, and they're happy because we continued racing and their brand continues to show on television, but their guests were not being looked after. So we had to pivot quite quickly. And do what a lot of people did, which was move to a digital platform. We originally thought this would be, and I'm only saying this between friends, but this would be a little bit of a sticking plaster to look after our sponsors whilst the COVID situation was in play. What we actually realized very quickly was we'd ignored digital completely. You know, hospitality is fundamentally analog. And experiences, in my opinion, are generally analog. They're about people, they're about being together, they're about sharing. And it's very difficult to then think, well, how do I translate that onto a digital platform? You know, we've all had enough Zoom calls for a lifetime. How do you engage? How do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it interesting? Well, we sent a crew to the race live, and these were closed races. They went behind the scenes, which nobody could get to. We recruited a whole load of Formula One legends to come on and speak. And we suddenly discovered that there are some things that digital can do better than live. And an example of that is interviews. We had Mika Hakkinen on our virtual paddock clubs, and he would log into our virtual paddock club from his home. And we were always joking it would be a different place in his home every time he logged in and joined us on the virtual paddock club. You know, he'd be in his garage showing us his show car, he'd be in the garden showing us his dog. And we said to him last time, you know, look, one of the questioners, because it's an interactive experience, said to him, one of the questions was, Mika, we've seen every room in your house. Is there anywhere left we haven't been? So he's now promised us that at the next virtual paddock club, we're going to do it from his sauna. Which is going to be interesting because, you know, the Finns don't usually go into the sauna fully clothed. So, but it's going to be interesting. Look, the point of that story is that we've learned that if Mika Hakkinen had been with us at the live paddock club, he'd have come onto a stage, he'd have spoken to everyone about what was going to happen in the race. Some people would have taken a selfie and he'd have left the stage. Here, it felt intimate. And here, he was able to answer questions live from people. And I think we learned a lot from that. It sounds obvious now, but there are some things that you realize that digital can in fact do better than live. And I think that's a really important lesson to learn, because digital should never be a second-rate version of live. Digital should be different. And you need to identify what it is that digital can do. So we created the Virtual Paddock Club, and we are now going to commercialize it, and we're going to keep it post-COVID.
Kate, can you give us the giveaway question now to our viewers to win the virtual VIP paddock club passes for the Monaco race?
Right. Okay. So the live paddock club, the traditional paddock club that we run, which is the biggest attended paddock club in 2019? Was it Monaco, Silverstone, or Abu Dhabi?
Fantastic. And on that note, let's show a video of the virtual paddock club in Bahrain in action, because it's truly spectacular. And unfortunately, I can't wait to see the sauna version.
Welcome everybody to the 2021 Formula One Virtual Paddock Club. We've got Louise Goodman, everybody.
It's brilliant to be here in Bahrain, and it's brilliant to be part of the Formula One Virtual Paddock Club team.
Can you see me? I have a paddock club pass here, you know?
I think we're set for a battle royal here in Bahrain.
You know, we both like sports. We talking about playing paddle tomorrow or trying to play golf always together.
See, let's have a quick look around. Carlos Sainz Sr. talking with David Coulthard, whose birthday it is today. Here's another very familiar face, Jenson Button, Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, having a chat as well.
Motorsport, that is my passion. You can understand how long ago we started with motorsport.
How do you prepare for it?
You know, they'll be coming into this really, really excited, but actually they've had months of preparation.
This is one of the fastest places on the track. They're going to be hitting 300 kilometers an hour and a massive braking zone.
And then the artistry starts. How you just slowly peel off the brake pressure.
Yeah.
Just in case we've forgotten what your name is on the side of the helmet.
The good designer is the guy who handles all those different situations well.
We are really thrilled to see the start of this incredible first race of the season. So thanks for all of you that are connected with us.
Now we have so much in store for you this year and some big changes. That's it from us here. Thank you very much, guys. See you soon.
Awesome. So please send us the answer to the question that Kate asked, and we will announce winners who are going to win the VIP passes at the end of our SIGA Wow show. But I want to ask Kate now, the face of Formula One, it has changed since the owners banning, the new owners, Liberty Media, banning the grid girls. And how important is the advancement been for women in sport and also women in business? And what has been the reactions from the fans and the investors?
I think it's been a really, really interesting few years across the world, certainly in a lot of sports, but in Formula One as well. I think a lot of things are intersecting at the moment, and I've seen more advancement on diversity and inclusion issues over the last 3 or 4 years than the 20 years before that, you know, and the 25 years of that I've been working in the business. So I think it's now is the time. It's all happening now, and it's been fantastic. I mean, you know, yeah, the grid girls, you know, it was just, they were going to go at some point anyway. It was just dated. It's just a very, very dated, and they should have gone a long time before that, but it was no, you know, it just made us, it just didn't look good. It wasn't a good look. But behind the scenes, there is a lot more than that going on. That's a very signature, a signature decision to make, and it was the right decision to make. But I think behind the scenes, there is so much more going on. Look, you know, you're interviewing me now as a leader of some kind, or a successful business person in a male-dominated sport. What am I doing? You know, I'm director of hospitality, right? What would be really interesting would be if I'm, you know, director of technical engineering, right? That's where we need to get to. You know, I think it's, in my experience, there are plenty of lawyers, accountants, and professional services working in every industry, even male industries. But what Catherine is doing with W Series, and what work we need to do, is to get more girls, and I say girls because you have to get them early, you have to get more girls involved in science, technology, engineering, and maths. You have to get them interested in go-karting, and that's where it all starts. And I think that's where the real work is. That's where the real work we have to do. We run a program called F1 in Schools, and it's something that I set up with Bernie in 2004. And it massively overrepresents in girls. And that's it. This is brilliant, because if you start getting girls interested in technology, science, technology, engineering, and maths when they're young, that will lead them into being, you know, the head of aerodynamics, or taking Ross's job. And that's where we should be aiming for, in my opinion.
Thank you, Kate. Catherine, how can we do it? How can we get the women and the girls inspired at an early age into technology and I suppose go-karting from the start is important. How are you doing it at the W Series to bring about this cultural change that's needed?
Well, I think you do two things. Is one, you inspire people at grassroots level, but two, you have to create those heroes so people can see what they want to be. So that's why we, at the time, it was very controversial, but we put 18 drivers onto a grid together. And what we believed that we were doing is we were giving the young girls a vision of what is possible for them. And that previously hadn't existed at all. And also what we're working very hard on, as Kate mentioned, is getting lots more mechanics and engineers. And I don't think I'm allowed to say sort of the numbers that we've got, because of, you know, sort of my comms team want to make lots of new announcements and stuff. But, you know, we're very excited about, you know, the numbers of women that we are coming into those roles that, as Kate has referred to, as being historically defined as being very much male roles. So, you know, sort of, I think in summary, you create the heroes, and if you create those heroes, when we were at our last race in Brands Hatch, for example, we couldn't believe the numbers of young girls and young kids that were coming down to our paddock, and were just looking up, you know, dressing, you know, we hadn't even got to creating W Series merchandise at the time, but these kids were coming up in W Series suits that their parents had made them. You know, and these young girls, you know, just looking up to their heroes, and you really did believe that, you know, that they see being a motor racing driver as a true possibility. And also we had lots of girls, over 100 girls from London Youth, which is a charity to, you know, give aspiration and promote, you know, sort of young people from poorer parts of London. And it was so interesting is hearing them. They didn't want to be drivers, but they all said, I never knew a woman could become a mechanic. You know, if you see it, you know it's possible to do. So I think you just got to paint people's dreams for them sometimes.
I think that's brilliant, and that's what our global female mentorship program's about, and that I'm leading. But it's about linking up, finding heroes of women in the industry that can help, whether it's tech, engineering. There's so many different things that make up the sports industry, and totally agree with you. But let's bring in Kate back in, because Formula One, Kate, it's known to be a white male sport for the elite. But obviously you've got a whole new demographic to appeal to. Half the population are women. How are you breaking the mold in order to ensure the sustainability and also the diversity and inclusion piece? And are you putting them together in order to drive Formula One and its popularity forward post-COVID?
I think that, you know, there is no killer policy or there is no magic bullet to doing this. I think that everyone who starts on this diversity and inclusion journey has to understand that it's a lot of little things that are going to make the difference, and it's in every aspect of the business, and it's root and branch. So I've talked about things like F1 in schools is about encouraging school kids and disproportionately representing girls and getting them into STEM. I think there are other things that you can do. I chatted to you the other day, Katie, and I gave you an example of how sometimes it's the little things that make a difference. But when I recruited staff, I would make sure that Formula One did not appear on the recruitment advertisement. And that was because as soon as you say Formula One, you would get a mass of applications from men and very much less from women. When I took Formula One off the job and just said what the job was, because those were the skills that I was looking for, but without saying it was Formula One, suddenly the number of women applying shot up. Right? So there was an initial perception that that job is not for me, going back to what Catherine was talking about. The perception was there, that job is not for me, it's in Formula One. Well, you know, the skills they were perfectly capable of doing, obviously, and I ended up recruiting women who wouldn't have otherwise applied because they had a perception that it was, and I'm sure the same is for many things, football perhaps. So, you know, going back to your question, I think that you have to look at almost every aspect of your business and question it in a way that you haven't questioned it before, and adjust and make changes throughout your business to try and make sure that those inadvertent barriers are not there.
And did you feel, Kate, that there's pressure from the sponsors and the fans in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement to adapt Formula One and make it more inclusive and diversity and inclusivity friendly? Yes,
for sure. I think that there has been and this is what I was saying to you before, in all the 25 years I've been involved, I've seen more change in the last couple of years than over the previous 20 odd years, for sure. It's becoming diversity inclusion. It's a little bit like tackling sustainability. Sustainability was a little bit wacky 10 years ago. It then gradually became more mainstream, you know, and now it's normal course of business. And I think that's the sort of trajectory we're going on now. You know, 10 years ago, banging on about diversity and inclusion would have been seen as a sort of marginal worthy topic. Now it's mainstream, and it's very soon going to become normal course of business. And I think that's fantastic. It's accelerating very quickly. Yes, a lot of pressure from sponsors. Good for them. Good for them for forcing change. You know, they hold the checkbook. They should be holding sport to account. And I'm all in favor of that. And they can drive change. So that's good. The fans, for sure. You know, why would you want to alienate 50% of the world's population? You don't. So pressure from fans is also very powerful, and I think that's been super helpful. But it's changing fast now, and that's a good thing.
I couldn't agree more with you, Kate. And I think that, you know, on the accountability part, SIGA's driving change and reform for accountability. That's why we're a multi-stakeholder coalition of like-minded organisations, and we have the global sponsors like MasterCard, like Qatar Airways and others in our group, because they want to know that what they're investing in is clean and accountable and transparent. And I think it's a great way to show it on the diversity and inclusion piece and to champion it. Catherine, I know that you are incredibly busy and that you also are chairing the EDI, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee at Motorsport UK. Can you tell us about the role and how far are we from narrowing that gap?
I think it's going to take years to have meaningful change within motorsport. I think it's just over 5% of all licence holders in the UK are female. There is a huge and significant long way to go, and that requires a lot of investment, at grassroots. And we don't underestimate the task ahead of us. But in my time since, because I'm historically, as I've explained, I'm not a motorsport person by training at all. I've only been involved in motorsport probably and in the motorsport environment for 3 or 4 years. But the numbers of women who are involved in motorsport, I think, has changed considerably even since that time. I was at a BTCC event last summer, and I couldn't believe the numbers of women who were in the paddock in all sorts of different jobs. Still there's a problem. There aren't, are very few drivers, odd ones come in and out. But really across the paddock, there are lots more women who are becoming visible. And that's obviously, we've got to continue that drive and hopefully in the end, get 50% of people involved of women involved in all aspects of motorsport. I think it's easier for someone like W Series to talk about diversity because we're a brand new business and we've set ourselves up in a way to be diverse and inclusive. It is a pillar and in the DNA of W Series that drivers don't pay for their drives. So we W Series pays for that, and that allows all drivers of skill to enter. So we had a couple of examples in our first year of Alice Powell, that she had historically driven in GP3, had to give up because she couldn't find the money. Emma Kymäläinen, has raced with a lot of the Scandinavian Formula One drivers, and similarly she couldn't raise the money. And actually there was a story about her recently of her racing in a series in the US, and they said, well, if we're sponsored by I suppose a porn magazine, and if you take your top off you'll get the drive. So she didn't get the drive. So the world, I think giving the women the opportunity through a free drive helps our inclusion policies enormously. And also all of our cars are identical. And I think that we aren't a technological platform. So we don't pretend to be Formula One yet, Kate, give us a few years, just a few years. And and because all the cars are identical, we're actually finding out who the fastest drivers are. So I think that also helps propel the fastest drivers to go on into higher levels of motorsport, and hopefully, within whether it's 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, that one of our drivers will get into Formula One. But it's going to take a long time. And as Kate said, it is what we need to get is the girls into karting. And what needs to happen is that the girls need to spend exactly the same amount of time in the cars and in testing in all levels of motorsport, because even our most successful drivers, they haven't had probably 10-15% of the amount of time as the top men in our sport have. So it's really, we've got to start now to inspire those young girls and to get more money in at the grassroots level to give the girls and the boys the same opportunity.
I think it's amazing, Catherine, the way that you've sort of almost started from a blank piece of paper to innovate the W Series and almost create this level playing field, which is going to then create this stream of female champions that are going to then go on to be the next Formula One driver in years to come. Kate, what else can you do in Formula One? You've got the Hamilton Commission, which is about more diversity and inclusion. Can you tell us a bit more about that? And also your Race as One campaign. We've got a video about that, but I'd love you to answer the question about the Hamilton Commission first.
Well, the Hamilton Commission, Lewis has been a fantastic lightning rod and force for change, I think, within Formula One, and that's because he was such a powerful figure, in being a hugely successful driver, the most talented driver of his generation, winning world championships. He had a voice, and he decided to use that voice, which was really, really well received and powerful. Slightly uncomfortable sometimes, but ultimately he's using his voice for good. He set up his foundation. We are working with them along with our We Race as One platform, which is our platform for our diversity and inclusion, sustainability and community focused endeavors. So we are working with them. We've set up our own foundation. As you know, Chase Carey donated to that. We've done a tie-up with Global Citizen, which is one of the world's largest advocacy organizations. And this is just the beginning. We now have to figure out what are the practical steps that come out of that. What can we do? We're setting it up. We've raised the issues. We've asked some uncomfortable questions. We've now got to figure out how to answer them.
And Kate, you have welcomed W Series, into your weekend platform. Only in our second year of racing. I mean, it is pretty extraordinary, I think, the commitment that you have shown to diversity, to getting more women in all aspects of motorsport. I think.
Well, that's interesting, Catherine, because that decision took about a nanosecond, when we saw, and I think credit to you, the job done in season 1 was so phenomenally good. I mean, it was such a professional, if you'd been a bit shit, we wouldn't have asked, but you weren't. It was a fantastically organized series, beautifully delivered with really, really credible underpinnings to it. And so once you saw that, it wasn't a difficult decision at all, and it fits very naturally. And we haven't actually done it yet, but watch this space, because I think it's going to really elevate what we're both trying to do in this space. I think it's going to make a difference, albeit, as you say, it's going to take some years to grow it from grassroots all the way up to a female driver, a woman driver in Formula One, but it will happen. And for sure, it's not going to happen unless we do these things.
Yes, quite.
And when can we expect the first collaboration with W Series and Formula One racing together? Do we know yet?
Last weekend of June at Paul Ricard, that's our first race.
Brilliant. So our viewers, please watch that and support. I think that women, we have a responsibility also to promote women's sport. We need to be fans of that sport and promote it ourselves, as well as attract the male fans that are already motorsports fans. So I do appeal to us all to have the responsibility and take an interest, because it does affect all of us here. And we're going to go to some questions. I've got a question from Eleanor Golzanaz from Wise, which is she's from Barcelona in Spain, and she's saying, what more can big companies and organizations like Formula One or the FIA do to encourage women to apply for roles in motorsports?
Well, if I take on, I think they're doing a huge amount already. I think there is a Women in Motorsport Commission at the FIA that's been in place for 10 years, and they are promoting women in all aspects of motorsport. Girls on Track has just amalgamated into the FIA, which is promoting young girls into motorsport and specifically into STEM subjects. So I think a lot is happening already, but I think where W Series can augment all of those efforts is to create heroes. I still believe that young kids love to support and follow heroes, and I think hopefully that will pass on into creating both more female fans, but actually getting more women involved.
Kate?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I'd go back to what I was talking about with things like F1 in schools and karting initiatives. The key to this is you have to think outside your immediate priorities, and your immediate strategies can be all kinds of things around recruitment, you know, and those are all good things to do. But you need to look wider than your own internal organization and look at where your organization is fed from. You know, whatever organization you are, a commercial organization or a sport, where is it fed from? And you have to start early. And as I said, I think that one of the, as well as agreeing with Catherine that you need heroes there, you know, the see it to be it approach. But I also think that one of the things I've observed is that one of the challenges in getting women into senior positions in traditionally male industries, sports or environments is that they can't see themselves in there. There is almost, what you're fighting is a poverty of aspiration from a very young age. So from the age of even at very young, at primary school, you know, if girls are not engaged and enthusiastic about science, technology, engineering and maths, or about going go-karting, they don't think they can do it. They don't think they can be that person because they can't see anyone there. So there's a poverty of aspiration there. They think, well, I can't possibly do that. That's not me. Well, it should be, and that's what we should be doing. We should be encouraging the flow of talent up from the bottom, and that takes some years to do. But that's what I think every big organization should be looking at, not just within their own organization and what you can do within your own organization, but look at how your organization is fed with talent.
And that's exactly why we've started the SIGA One show, because we want to get the message out. We want to showcase the W Series, showcase what you're doing at Formula One, because it is possible. And so I'd like to now bring in, time's flying, I'd like to bring in a video question we've had from Taryn Horner, who's one of our SIGA Women mentees. And so if you can play the video, our virtual studio of Taryn, and I think it's addressed to both of you.
My question for the panel today is, what piece of advice would you give young women who are trying to enter into non-traditional sports such as motorsports, where even though the landscape of sport and working in sport is traditionally male dominated, however, particularly in the areas of sports such as motorsport, there's even more of a male dominance. What piece of advice would you give to young women and females trying to enter the workforce in those areas of sport?
You've said self-belief, Kate. What's the other one? One more.
I would give two more, and they're very controversial. But I would say, if you wanted to follow my route, it would be don't be ambitious and don't be competitive. And that's exactly what most people don't tell you. I think what I'm trying to say is that you should do what you love. You should do what you absolutely love and are passionate about. You shouldn't, I gave up being ambitious many years ago and have been happier and more successful ever since. I gave up being competitive many years ago and have been happier and more successful ever since. I don't find that that's the way to a fulfilling career, and it's not a way to get where you want to be. So it's an odd thing to say, but I would say ditch the ambition, ditch the competitiveness, be who you are and do what you absolutely love.
So authenticity, I think, is the answer to that. Be true to yourself. Catherine, would you like to add anything before we move on to a next video question?
I think I would completely echo Kate's words, actually, is that motorsport is such a wide sport. With whatever abilities that you have, there will be a way for you to get involved. So it's much better and much better for your sanity is to do something that you're good at and you enjoy. It's pointless saying, I want to do motorsport. It's, well, actually, what do you want to do as a job? And then see how that will fit into motorsport, because invariably motorsport covers everything. But I would also say that, you know, a degree of bloody-mindedness helps. Now, I think that Kate is being extremely self-deprecating there. And I suspect she's had a tougher and more difficult time of it than she admits. But I suspect there's been a lot of times where she hasn't taken no for an answer. When people put barriers up, you've actually just got to develop a thick skin, I think, and continue and accept, you know, you will fail in life, or you won't always achieve what you want to first time, second time, maybe third time. But if that's really what you want to do, just don't give up.
Well, I think I would like to say here, just because I'm not competitive and I'm not ambitious does not mean I'm not the toughest old boot that you'll ever come across. If you know, you know, it does not, definitely doesn't mean I'm a nice person, I can assure you.
Yes, you are. Everyone, she is.
You've got that virtual panic pass to give out, Kate, and no one's got the answer right. Remind us of the question and prove to us how nice you are.
The question is, in 2019, which was the largest paddock club we operated? Was it Monaco, Silverstone, or Abu Dhabi?
Thanks for the reminder. Let's fingers crossed to prove that Kate isn't as tough as old boot as she says she is, that we can give this ticket away. If not, we'll have to roll it over for the next SIGA Wow session. We have Manuela Biz, who is a Brazilian communication consultant student. She's actually my personal mentee for the SIGA Women Mentorship Program, and she sent a video question to us, and it's actually on technology.
Hello, my name is Manuela, and my question is, in motorsports we see more men than women, not just on track, but also developing the technology using in the cars. It has been said already that it reflects the low number of women working as engineers. And thinking about this scenario, do you think that motorsports are a reflect of a mirror of society, or it can lead to the change and bring more women to work in technology as well?
Brilliant question, Manuela. Kate, Catherine, over to you.
Manuela, I think I was talking about this earlier, and I think you're right. Is Formula One a mirror of society? In a lot of ways, I hope not. I'd be very worried if it was. But on it, seriously, it goes back to what I've been saying throughout this, which is that, as Catherine said, there are many roles in Formula One. You can go from, well, I'm in hospitality, there is management, accountancy, law, there is technology, there is, you know, engineering. There are plenty of communications, marketing. So any skill set can be represented in Formula One. But I think the really interesting area is in the technology side of it. I think it's in science, technology, engineering, and maths, and it's about, for us and for me, it's about getting more girls interested in that side of the business. Because if you break down Formula One into sectors, or motorsport into sectors, you will find that in the technical side of it, women are massively underrepresented. In other areas, in other functions within motorsport, it might be more representative, but it's the technical side that is not representative, and I think that's where it needs our attention.
I've got another question that's just been WhatsApped to me. So shout out to Akas Chatterjee. How can we motivate young girls to follow women's sports? We touched on creating more women's fans earlier, particularly those within Asian countries who may have a more conservative cultural mindset.
I think that you need to deliver entertainment. Sport is entertainment across the world. Katie, you mentioned earlier on that you thought it was incumbent on women to watch female sport. I don't think people have a responsibility to do that at all. I think you need to deliver a really good quality, entertaining product. You know, I love all sorts of sports. I have a very, very wide, you know, sporting interest. I was a Formula One fan from a very early age because my father was. But I've also, you know, I was a member of Warwickshire County Cricket Club from 12 years old. You know, I love lots and lots of different sports. But that is because I love competition and I love the stories. And I think with W Series, what scared me to death was that I wasn't in control of what happened out on the circuit in our first year. Well, I never would be, but I had no idea how the female drivers would race against each other. And I'd had all of this noise about, oh, the girls, they won't, be tough against each other. The girls, they'll pull off, they won't be as aggressive as the boys, girls will be too soft. Girls won't be able to overtake each other properly. It won't be exciting. It won't be interesting. So actually, I didn't know what they would be like because there'd never been a single-seater female race before. And thankfully, what they demonstrated immediately was that it was, fantastic, good, fun, entertaining motorsport. And that is what I think in any female sport, that is what has got to be delivered. And it is important that female sport does stand up on its own 2 feet as an entertainment. And we're not just asking people to watch us because it's the right thing to do.
I would add another point of view that I have on that, Katie, which is I think that sport generally has a tougher time addressing this issue than maybe other industries do. And I think there's a reason for that. And I think it's because sport generally tends to be run by people who are fans of it. And you'll find this with sport runs very commonly on a federation structure, but it attracts fans of the sport to be the administrators and the people who run that sport. And so there is an embedded bias, I think, towards those demographic that are fans of the sport. And we've seen it, we've seen it in many sports that those are fans of the sport go on to run the sport. And I think that can be a little bit dangerous because you just end up self-replicating all the time. And I think one of the challenges for sport generally is to make sure that you open up your recruitment outside of your fan base. Because I think that you need a multitude of backgrounds and talents and experiences to come in and not just self-replicate and have fans running the sport all of the time.
So maybe the issue is some of the sports out there haven't appealed to women enough. They need to innovate and be that spectacle in order to generate more fans. So
yeah, well, I mean, McDonald's doesn't recruit people who are fans of burgers. And I think that genuinely is a perception that I have about sport, that it just generally replicates all the time by recruiting from its fan base.
We've got time for one final video question. It's from Yaona Nikolova. She's from the Sport, Business and Leadership student at Loughborough, London, and I'm going to be speaking to her group on Friday. I look forward to that. Joanna, can we play her video?
So my question is to both guests. Since starting my master's, I've reflected a lot on my style of leadership, and a large reason of this is because of Professor Tony Gay as our lecturer. He makes us delve really deep into our souls and into our leadership styles and characteristics and why we are certain ways, how we lead. However, sometimes I feel like when I do talk about certain aspects that I want to improve, such as being seen intimidating, people respond to me and question whether the reason people feel like that is because I am a woman and I am quite strong and decisive, and that if the tables were turned with a guy, that it wouldn't be the same. So my question is, how do you balance being a reflective leader with gender prejudice and expectations? And to what extent do you change for those that you are leading? Thank you.
Awesome question. Thanks, Joanna. Who wants to go first?
Well, Catherine, you're a natural leader. You go first.
I see my team here. I don't see myself really as being a leader. I see myself on the same level as everyone else who works in the business. Everyone believes in the mission, and what is most important is that we're all working in the same direction. So being a leader isn't about I think, telling people what to do is you recruit the best people in their particular area, and frankly, they tell you what to do, and you can discuss and encourage debate. And I think that is really important, especially in a new sport like ours. The reason why we make good decisions, I think, is that we debate everything. So we don't necessarily do something because it's been done before. We do something because we've thought about it and it's the right thing to do for us. And you listen to what the people have got to say around you. And what you do as a leader is just make sure that everyone is moving in the same direction.
Kate, your thoughts on leadership styles?
Yes, I think I've always found the sort of traditional notion of being a strong leader is a little bit off-putting, frankly. I think it's a little bit of an easy cop-out. It's an easy option to adopt this, I'm the strong leader, everyone should follow me, and every now and then I'll skit just so that everyone knows who's in charge. I don't think that, I've never been attracted to the idea of leadership, and I don't even like being called a leader in motorsport or an inspirational leader. I think it's slightly different than that. I think that you need to develop the confidence in what you're doing, as Catherine said, after collaborating and listening. If you listen more, you take a course of action, and you hope that most people will follow you. That's more, I think, a style of leadership that's slightly different from taking a leadership approach and expecting everyone to follow you. So I think it's a nuance, but for me, it's a very different approach. I think you have to be ballsy. You have to take a lead. And if you're doing something, if you're taking really difficult decisions, if you're communicating things differently and you want to take people with you, you know what? A bit of charm and a smile and some humor goes a long way in bringing people along with you. You won't always bring people along with you who want to go on the path that you're deciding to go on. Listen, override them, take it your way, but do it with grace, do it with elegance, do it with humor, do it with charm. You're not there to stamp on people who disagree with you. You're there to persuade them and bring them with you. And then what I always like to see is that you say, look, we're going to do it this way. Guess what? Because I'm in charge. But if it goes wrong, it's all my fault, not yours. I'm the one who goes under the bus. So, just trust me on this one. If you need to make a decision unilaterally, trust me on this one. Come with me. I'm going to protect you, whatever. It's my balls on the line, so to speak. And I'll get fired if not. It won't be you. So I do have a different, slightly different approach than a sort of 1980s, Boadicea type leader. I think that's a bit of a dated approach to leadership. I'm not sure if that answers the question, does it?
No, I think it does. I think it does, and I think that it really sort of your answers both really wrap up nicely in terms of explaining a new type of, if we're going to gender it, elegant leadership. Maybe that's the new style of leadership, and that's maybe being a woman. We do it with a smile on our face, but we will make the strong decisions and bring you on the journey. And certainly I am fascinated by both your career journeys. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the first ever SIGA Wow show. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'm really happy to announce, Kate, that we do have a winner for the first prize.
Yay!
It's Bethany Hudson. I think, Bethany, you're a SIGA mentee, so big up, Bethany, and you'll be watching from the comfort of your own home the Monaco Grand Prix at the Virtual Paddock Club. So that pass will be over to you. And I'd like to thank you both. Motorsports is clearly increasing its demographic to appeal to women, drivers, engineers, mechanics, the business and fans. And I think that it's been an amazing edition of SIGA Wow to showcase this fantastic sport that we can all get involved in. And I'm going to close now with two regular pieces that will be featured in the SIGA Wow show. The first one is that once a month we will announce a new female champion who's an athlete who we're going to celebrate for their prowess on the field or track, but also for having values of sport integrity. Would love to have in future a female racing driver be a SIGA champion. And that the name is Aileen Silva. If we can get her video of her in action. She is the founder and first female vice president of the Wrestling National Federation in Brazil. She participated in Rio 2016, and she's already qualified in the Tokyo Games. So thank you, Aileen, for being our SIGA champion. And finally, the regular piece that we are introducing, and it's going to be a surprise to our CEO, but we're going to have a male champion of the month. We need male champions to promote and inspire females in sport. I was speaking to Kate before the show, and she said that Bernie was one of her mentors. She mentioned another male champion that was her mentor. And as it's the first show, I'm going to nominate Emmanuel, our CEO, as the male champion for female leadership. And there he is modeling the first WOW t-shirt. Emmanuel, I think you need to give up your day job and become a brand ambassador for SIGA WOW. You look fantastic, and we have more t-shirts to give away. So all you have to do is send me your nominated male champion that has helped promote gender equity in the workplace. I can tell you that Emmanuel has supported me from day one, but more importantly, it's not just me. He has put gender equity in all the decision-making structures in SIGA, which is phenomenal for our organization. So Emmanuel, this is your WOW moment. And I will send you that Twitter card later for you to put on social media. So that's enough for me. Tune in to the second episode of SIGA WOW. It's Wednesday, the 2nd of June, 2021. If you have any suggested females that you'd like to showcase, contact me. You can contact me on LinkedIn, Katie Simmons. Follow us at SIGA Alliance, hashtag SIGA Women, hashtag, and I'm going to do it one last time, WOW. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much for having
we
us.
are.
We race to compete.
On the tracks, in the pits, as a sport. But we all race for something bigger.
It's time we race
for equality.
It's time we race for sustainability.
It's time we race to be global citizens.
It's time we race for equal access, opportunities, and representation.
Because sport can change the world, but it's up to us to make sure that change is for the better.
United, we are stronger.
Change starts with you.
It needs to come from your heart.
Keep working.
Keep learning. Keep on understanding.
We have a platform to
shift change, starting little by little. Boy or girl, man or woman.
United for the same causes.
We have the opportunity to spread the right message.
If we all pull together, every single person has responsibility.
The best example is our own example.
We need to be responsible on what kind of mark we leave.
We don't have all the answers yet, but we can help find them.
change starts here.
We race.
We race.
We race.
We race.
We race.
We race as one.